Well, good morning. It's been a little while since I've done this. I thought I'd start with pushing this up the driveway because it sort of shows you the steepness of my driveway. But it's a lovely Sunday morning. What is it? It's about 7 past 8 in the morning, I guess. So I just thought I'd go out for a little bit of a ride. Not that you haven't seen the scenery before. Just because, well, it's a lovely, I guess we're, in my opinion, moving into autumn. Certainly, at least climatically, if not according to the calendar. So just check that no one's coming. Right. Anyway, I just thought I was a bit sort of motivated this morning to say something. I guess if I was an American, I'd say, I was triggered, but I don't really think that's appropriate. A little discussion I had with a friend of mine about essentially sustainability. I guess that I like electric vehicles, but I also understand energy consumption too. And electric vehicles aren't magic, they're just a way of doing something with a different energy source compared to a petrol car, like that one over there. To me, the biggest problem is how many people are moving around and how far they're moving and how they're moving. So you can see that I live in a small town, but even when I lived in a bigger town, or when I lived in Tokyo, I lived in Tokyo for about 3 years, and I lived in, a decent sized town in Finland, and I've lived in Brisbane, and I spent a lot of time in different big cities, high density populations, and just because I choose to live out here doesn't really change really that much in some ways, because most people need to travel, on a short journey to the shops or to the school or to a place of work, which shouldn't be that long. And so if your journey is quite long, then it says something about either urban design or your life choices. So, we choose to live somewhere which we consider amenable, and if that's a long way from where we work, then maybe that's part of urban design, really, because if urban design was better, then we'd fucking not have to travel as far. So last night I had some visitors from Brisbane come up and said g'day, and we went out to dinner and had dinner here at the pub, which I've now arrived at, and I pretty much parked there, and we had dinner, and then we had a few chats, and then they went off to where they were staying for the night, and I went back home. And it's been like 3 minutes to get here. So, if I was walking, obviously, let's just do the numbers quickly. Say it was walking at 4 kilometers an hour. I've traveled for 3 minutes to get here. If I was riding the scooter at about 25 kilometers an hour, yeah, you can see that it's a lot faster. It's only when it comes to going into Warwick, which is 37 kilometers from here, that it really makes a lot of difference. Good to see the market's on again. It's a nice little town here. Pretty much everything that I need is here, and I can either choose to get it here or I can go into Warwick. But another perspective here is that here's my scoot, which I've now had since about this time in 2019, and it's done a lot of kilometres. It's been chucked in the back of the car to go down to Brisbane, the capital city, where I was working for a contract down there, and I specifically chose somewhere to live that would be scootering distance from where I was working. So basically that meant that I drove my car the 200 kilometres odd down to my place of work on Monday morning, took my scooter from where I stayed, left everything in my car, and then basically jumped on the scooter and went to and from work every day until Friday, when I'd come home and I'd jump on the scooter and go back to my car and shove everything in my car and drive back here. So basically, amusingly, I spent the same amount of kilometres each week driving my car 200 k's from here down to the city and staying in a small place. So I used the same, actually I used a little bit less fuel than if I'd been commuting. So, there's all sorts of logical things here. And by the way, I'm stopped here because this PV array has been here since I've lived here. And I think it's a great idea, it powers this small community section here, which, is for elderly people. And it also feeds into the grid. And since we're out on the extremities, it provides some energy. I personally think very strongly that, community level PEV, photoelectric voltaic panels or whatever the fuck, is the way to go compared to everyone having it on their roof, because here all of this is properly maintained and looked after by people who actually give a shit. It's not on roofs, so you don't have to have people tramping all over your roof, and here it is in the community, benefiting the community. And the thing that I don't like about rooftop photovoltaic outside of off-grid situations is that it really is all about benefiting me. It's all about me. And I don't really think that's very community oriented. And even to get people to be interested in me, they had to actually give government subsidies to get everyone onto doing this. Whereas, at a bigger level, we need to start thinking about our storage and our usage of electricity. And, to be honest, that guy could maintain his paddock better, couldn't he? To be honest, this would be extremely amenable to chucking storage in underneath those fucking panels. So, we could actually make this community power self-sufficient by just modifying what's already here. We've got a grid of wires to people's houses, but in some ways that just really makes a lot more sense than everyone having their own little thing. Oh, and by the way, you can notice a whole bunch of solar panels on the roof of the co-op over there. So, Australia has got a lot of solar. We just now start to need thinking about storage. And storage doesn't have to be huge, actually. I know everyone's in love with lithium, but that's only because most people don't really understand what's available. And let me just give you for example. If we were to use a tank of that size and use it for one of the redox flow systems, like the zinc bromides and I think ferric bromides, and now there's even new stuff in chlorine-based electrolytes, that'd probably power like at least half the town overnight. That's a lot of volume there. That's 22,000 litres. I think that's 22,000 litres. I'll have to look at it. But it's probably about 22 cubic metres. Anyway, so the problem as I see it is that most people are mad. Now, I think it's a good time for me to clarify my opinion of mad, or my definition of mad. And let's start with sanity. My view of sanity is the least distortion of reality that you need to be happy and to understand life and to live in life. So straight away, if you've got to believe in fairies, or you've got to believe in, sky mothers that come down and satisfy your needs when you're, why do I say that wrong? I'm a religious-based organisation. If you've got to rely on those things, then maybe that's not exactly, sort of sensible. Anyway, I think, there's a bit of madness happening, a little bit of distortion of reality happening in the way people understand the world. And I think that even though, in a world that's obsessed with decarbonisation, even though the majority of carbon does not come from transport, it's still something like 12 or 13%. And if we can knock that down in a real way, then I guess that's worth something, right? But we shouldn't be busting our asses to do it. Instead, I think we should be looking at sustainability. And we don't seem to be. G'day, fella. But, yeah. Anyway, just problem is most people actually think they know something and they don't ever bother to check it. They don't ever bother to read up on it. Instead of saying, is this wrong? They go and look for, do other people think I'm right? And that's just confirmation bias. And people are confirming their crazy biases all the time. And that's why we don't get anywhere. Anyway. Oh. Fireys are out there. Look at that, the car that passed me, I catch up with it again. I always hold my breath when I'm behind a diesel when they're taking off. Anyway, yeah. Like you see some elderly people here, they're just coming down to get their stuff from the newsagent, drive their car, less distance than I've done here. And, they've got to use a vehicle for it. I mean, this is a vehicle. It's obviously a very light vehicle. So, what's a number? If I was going to talk about a number. Well, people who have petrol cars may or may not know how much fuel their car consumes as they drive. They might, have seen those numbers at some stage, but they're not aware of them. And if you're not aware of those numbers, then you're really not able to make any decisions about things. So let's pull some numbers out. Let's go with an average car, petrol car, not diesel, using around about, what have we got? Sorry, I'm just keeping an eye on traffic. Using about 8 litres per 100 kilometres. Okay? So, what about electricity? Well, I'd say it's pretty fair to say that most EVs use something around about 15 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometres. This little guy uses about 1.3 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometres. So you can tell that that's basically nothing. So, depending upon how your electricity is generated, and a lot of people like to skew the facts by saying that the majority of electricity is, when they talk about carbon footprint of electric cars, is always generated from renewable resources, so therefore it's zero, which isn't actually true anyway. But if you live in a place where your electricity is generated by burning fossil fuels of some kind, then basically you're pretty much find, if you do the numbers, that it's almost exactly the same amount of CO2 as an ICE car. So, what the fuck? Hello, what are we going on here? Ah, here we go. Anyway, so you've really got to, think about it and go, okay, in reality, I could charge this in my solar shed if I wanted to, but it doesn't make any difference because, oh, and by the way, my solar shed is fully off-grid solar. You'll probably find that on my channel somewhere. The thing is that this draws so little from the grid, like a tenth of what an EV does. I've straight away reduced my CO2 by 90%. Well, fuck me dead. Isn't that beneficial? And if I rode an e-bicycle or just a regular bicycle, which I have and ride around the place, I'd use even less. And by using this, it's actually good for my balance, it's good for my core strength, it's good to keep me mobile, you know. Sitting in cars doesn't really keep you mobile. Sitting in cars makes you oblivious to the environment you're going through, and, you know, you don't get to really change how much traffic is on the road. You still need big car parks. And I know when I lived in Brisbane, I would go shopping, and there's a blog post on that I can link to in the description if people are interested. And you know, the cost in time for me to travel from where I lived to the shopping centre was nearly the same if I took my car versus if I took this electric scooter here. So, you know, it's pretty interesting. People make a whole bunch of assumptions that they've never really checked. And sometimes I think that really people actually don't give a fuck. They actually just want it all to be the same. They just want to be basically lazy and keep doing the same whole thing. So, yeah. Why don't I see if I... this is probably dragged on long enough, so I'll just head back home and chuck this on YouTube. Whatever you're doing today, I hope you have a nice day. And in fact, whatever you're doing any day of the week, I hope you have a nice day. Hopefully some of this musing is beneficial to trigger you to think a bit more about different aspects of different ways of looking at the same thing. Oh yeah, I meant to say earlier that so far in the 2 years that I've owned this, because it's got those foam core rubber tyres, you know, they're sufficiently comfortable on the road. Obviously not as good as my pneumatic tyres on my MX-60, but you know, I haven't had a flat on them yet. I haven't had to fix anything on this. I've done a little bit of servicing. Just the other day I chucked it up on the thing because I heard a bit of a squeak, and turned out that it just needed a bit of oil in some places. It was a clunk actually. So I, you know, went over and checked everything. So I'd say on average I check the bolts on this about every 3 months ever since I've been using Permatex. You know, maintenance on it's pretty low, nothing's broken, haven't had to fix anything. I'm on it. It's pretty good, you know. It's been fucking damn cheap transport. I paid $1,500 for it, and you know, seriously, it'll climb anything that, you know. You can see plenty of videos on my YouTube channel of what I've climbed on this thing. So yeah, you know, it's definitely sustainable transport. There you go. Mowed the lawn yesterday. Always sort of feels nice to, you know, mow the lawn. Oh yeah, and I'm preparing for winter too, of course, because it's winter time. And if you're wondering about the solar panel on my motorbike there, that's because the poor girl only gets used about once every week or so. And anti-theft thing I want it, which might be helpful in the city, sort of sucks a little bit too much battery. And so, especially in winter time, it's a little bit doughy when you go to start it. And if you don't start it for 2 weeks, then you definitely. So, another little piece of information: the battery in that is what's called an AGM battery, which I think stands for absorbent glass mat. And the AGM batteries have, you know, the good depth of discharge. You can really suck them down hard and then pull them back up again, but you can't leave them down real long. And sulfation on lead acid batteries is a big issue. Sulfation actually destroys the viability of the battery, so you've really got to pull it all apart and clean the plates chemically to get rid of it, which can be done in recycling. But yeah, so to prevent the battery from being damaged, I've got it on a little 20-watt solar panel, and it's trickle charged all the time. It's got a solar controller on it so that it's not just, you know, just lean you there and see if you fall over. And it's not just on the panel because that'll destroy the battery, so it's, you know, on a controller. But yeah, anyway, I hope you enjoyed the trip. It's a lovely day. I'm probably going to go out for another ride in a little while, but I've got a couple of other things I've got to do first.